health
Dr. Day, you are telling us that you feel that the promiser in this particular case for this plan is better aligned with the plan and therefore better for the people who are being promised this, okay, for politically speaking, goodies.
Yeah.
And you're saying it's because politically William Ruto is at a point where he feels that it's in his best interest if he actually works with the people.
Yep.
To cross over into
Yep.
in cross over Jordan into the other onto the other side. What was that other side?
Canaan.
It was Canaan.
Yes.
Ah, yeah. Could be coming back this way. You know. But then that also still sounds like he would abandon the people if he just crosses.
Now, actually, you also need to look at track record.
Oh,
Because if you look at Jubilee, Jubilee, and if you look at, in fact, I keep telling people, can these people execute? Can they deliver? I wish that they did less. Because the reason why we are in debt distress is because Jubilee promised a lot and tried to do it all. The problem is they did not have a proper economic strategy behind it. Okay, so they thought, William Ruto, and we've had this conversation with him, he actually believed that they could use mega infrastructure to transform the country. And they didn't pay attention to the financing. Okay, so if you look at the things they promised, you can actually see elements of the same. They were overambitious. They promised school laptops for every kid.
Yeah.
They fell flat on their face on that one, although they have recovered a little bit. I understand they've actually delivered tablets to up to 1.5 million kids up to standard 3. They promised universal electricity connections. They have actually increased the connections from about 3 million to 8 million. They've scaled up quite dramatically, but that has hit the P&L of KPLC quite badly, because a lot of these consumers cannot actually pay. So the cost of whatever. They actually promised 10,000 kilometers of road. They've actually done it. And they did it by changing some of the road design standards sort of things and create light duty roads and heavy duty roads. So they've actually doubled our tarmac road network. We would not be in so much debt if they had not done this.
If they hadn't done all these things.
So the thing is, there is no question about when he puts his nose on the grind, that he will do the stuff that he has said. He tries to do the stuff that he has said he will do. When he was Minister for Agriculture, he was actually very aggressive in doing fertilizer subsidies and all that kind of thing. And if you look at those years, actually, if you look at something like maize production, it actually went up quite a lot.
Okay.
But again, it wasn't sustainable. In terms of financing. And then you switch to infrastructure. So you can see, so it is not for lack of wanting to do these big things. It is a question of, do you have the right plan? So I think when people ask, again, that's why I said we have reduced everything to corruption so that you have a chorus and you don't ask, have Jubilee actually been delivering?
Okay.
It
So he has been
delivering.
part of the government that has delivered these things. He has
They
been.
did this, the first term, they actually did all these things. If you look at the things that they had planned to do, these things called Big Four, if they had actually continued, they would have obviously run into financial problems, headwinds, but they would have been actually trying to do it. Where you see conflict, and he has not been as forthcoming about where their conflicts with his boss started, is, for instance, in the dairy sector. So William Ruto and his friends go and negotiate to get support from some European countries to put milk coolers all over the country for farmers. Without realizing
As
that...
public or private?
You just got private. You give them to the cooperatives.
Okay.
You deliver. It was a grant. These are grants from, I think, Poland, Holland, and a couple of places. And they started shipping them in. And I think Muranga got quite a few. Without realizing that they are now running straight into the Brookside value chain. Because if the farmers have coolers where they can keep their milk, they have bargaining power. You can hold on to your milk for 3-4 days while looking for a better buyer. So the first county which they rolled out and got several coolers out there was Muranga. The first governor to run into trouble with Kenyatta was Wairia Muranga. That was the point of conflict. If you look at the Big Four plan, the first plan to sort of go under was the housing plan. Because once you start doing mass housing, affordable sort of housing, you scale that up, you now affect the existing property developers and aspiring property developers like Northlands. Because you are now competing in that space. Remarkably, he had not made these connections himself. Or he was running into these...
but they were not his plans, they were their plans.
Yeah, but you see, if you recall the way that government was, it was very much a sort of coalition government.
It was a genuine Nusumkata
It was a Nusumkata government. So he was pushing his things, which he thought were the things on his URP platform. And they were having these runnings. And it took a while to figure out that their interests are not aligned. So the question of alignment of political interests is fundamental. So I think the question of a track record of wanting to do things, if you think of the power, the universal power sort of thing, they had another plan to do, I think, cooking gas. Huge thing to sort of convert the sort of cooking gas. So you can actually see an orientation towards doing these bottom things that reach the masses.
Right. So is there an overpromise today? Because this is what we're saying, that, look, there was an overpromise then, and that was probably what got the country into its debt problem. That if the things that they had said they were going to do, they had not done to the extent that they did, perhaps would not be in the debt issue. So today, the things that we're hearing leading up to August 8th, is there also an overpromise?
Now, here's the interesting thing. I think I gather from my friends that the reason why William Ruto actually reached out to me is because I started calling out these overpromises and the financing problems quite early. So when they hit the wall, they actually acknowledged, wait a minute, I think I need to talk to this gentleman. He seems to have...
There's something he's saying.
Things you're saying that we weren't paying sufficient attention to. So I think it's credit on his part. In fact, when we sat down the first time, he spent about 40 minutes trying to explain to me why they were trying to do what they were trying to do. Yeah. So is there another promise? That's something we have made absolutely sure that there isn't.
Okay.
Because if you see what we are saying, one, if you read the plan, we are very careful. We say it is budget neutral. Everywhere we make a commitment, we say where the money is coming from. Okay, and we actually show that the fiscal framework is one where we are actually going to be reducing the deficit.
Right.
Because if you're in a hole, you should stop digging.
Okay.
So that if you look at where is these 500 billion shillings we are committing to capitalize the small business and agriculture coming from, if you look at our current development budget, it's about 700 billion shillings. Of 700 billion shillings, the life of a project is usually 3 to 4 years. Okay, so every year, a quarter of the projects are getting completed. So that releases money that then finances new projects.
On paper, though, Dr. D.
No, that's exactly what happens. If you're building a road, it takes 2 to 3 years. When it's done,
if they start building the road.
We have built 10,000 kilometers of road.
So
ask every Kenyan. We've built the SGR. They have done 5 million new electricity connections.
But forgive my ignorance here, but is it not that the budget that was created was for building the roads? Why would that same budget still exist when the roads have already been built?
That's my point. What happens, the budget is a flow.
Yes.
So you complete projects, So once those corporate projects, it frees up
the money
within that resource envelope, and we have something called a forward budget. Then new projects in the forward budget fall in the following year. Okay, so you always projects going out and new projects coming in. The problem is that we have also been increasing the size every year, the ticket. So when Jubilee came in, the development budget was 300 billion. Now it's 700. Okay, because not only are you bringing in new projects, you're bringing in a bigger portfolio than the one which is exiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we've said is that we are going to finance our programs only from the funding freed by the portfolio that is exiting. So if you take 700 billion and you take a quarter of that, is about 170. If you add 170 over 5 years, it's about 700 billion. If you look at our core programs, they are 500 billion. So they are within that resource envelope.
Okay.
So what we're doing is that we are shifting resources within the budget by scaling down infrastructure investment, because Jubilee has done a lot of it. Thank you very much.
So now that the
more than
infrastructure is
necessary,
there, now let's
is in
move to
place.
something else.
Let's take the money so that those roads can actually pay. So that put that money in agriculture, so that those roads have actually something to carry.
Okay, so David, I mean, coming from Jay Buchanan and his romance, his politics without romance, here we are saying, no wine, no flowers. As you're looking at this and saying, are you convicted as part of the plan that this will actually work for Kenya and that the intent is to make it work?
You know, I was asked these questions much more when NAC came into office, because there was a lot more cynicism then. Is it actually possible to turn this economy around after sort of 20-something years of Moi? Huru was out saying that they are saying that free education cannot be done. We turned the economy around in 3 years. So I've walked this bit. I was in charge of that plan, developing that economic recovery strategy.
What responsibility lies on your shoulders to make sure it's actually done?
Yes, to exactly that. To put in the structure that will deliver, that will execute. We have thought it through. We know what that structure is going to be. I know this government in and out. I know where the bottlenecks are. But the thing which, again, people are not conscious of what I'm saying, we are not executing this plan. Our core plan is not government programs. I said that before. We are taking money and putting it in farmer and business-owned institutions. That is not very complicated. What is challenging there is capacity building. But it is when you're trying to use government pipeline to do government programs that you run into all sorts of implementation challenges. But clearly putting some funds here and saying these funds are available for your cooperative. Let us see that your cooperative has the systems to do this, and we put in that 5 million shillings, and we say now you can stock animal feeds and veterinary things and that kind of thing, and your county government which is because agriculture is devolved, will sort of provide the extension services. We do that cooperative, we move to the next one, we move to the next one. And there's some fairly low-hanging fruit. I'll give an example. Pending bills. We have 500 billion shillings worth of pending bills, or thereabouts. Now, these pending bills to suppliers have devastated this business sector, particularly small businesses, because they're the ones who have the least capacity to be able to whatever. Now, that is a very simple, low-hanging fruit in terms of a stimulus you can do for the economy, because you securitize those bills. We did this before. This is the first time we're having a pending bills problem. You securitize those pending bills. You give those people as zero coupon bonds instead of the money that they are owed. They either discount those bonds in the market or use them as security, working capital security with their banks. And within a very short time, you can do that within a month or two. You have put back 500 billion shillings. You have recapitalized. You have recapitalized those businesses which have been strangled by, again, the state overextending itself, so that it is now overextended so much so that when it doesn't have enough cash flow, it has to decide whether it pays foreign debt and or it pays interest on bonds, or whether it pays suppliers. And the people who bear the brunt is because the government will have to pay salaries and pay soldiers and pay interest. Who bears the brunt? It is suppliers.
Professor, Dr. What you say is simple and straightforward. Are we saying that those who run our Ministry of Finance, I'm sure they have some economists, don't understand this concept and have not been able to implement it?
It's not just here. Do you think Greece doesn't have good economists?
I'm certain it does.
It went bankrupt.
Completely.
Sri Lanka has excellent economists. It went bankrupt. Argentina has outstanding international economists. Some of them taught me. It's been going bankrupt every decade. So when you have a systemic political economy problem of the kind I have described, you will go bankrupt very often. It is not about technocrats. This idea that the Minister of Finance can fix a country is another one of those fake myths. The real Minister of Finance of a presidential system is the president. In a presidential system. In a parliamentary system, is a bit different because if you are the Minister of Finance and you are sort of also have a political constituency, because you are elected and you sit in parliament, you can actually challenge the president. Babaja Chai did that. He challenged Moi and he was fired, but he went back to parliament and could continue to
raise the
questions from there. If you're an appointee of the president, and when the president only appoints his lackeys, then it is much more difficult to challenge.
David, you said you sometimes stuck between, well, maybe not stuck, but then you've realized that you'd have a leader who was corrupt and incompetent or corrupt and competent. Where does William Ruto lie here?
I am not preoccupied with personalities. If you are preoccupied with personalities in this country and this sort of what a friend of mine calls monopoly of righteousness, you would not engage in politics. You have to take our politics as what it is.
Character matters, though.
It doesn't.
No?
I believe in institutions. We are all bad people or good people, depending on circumstance. I think it's a question of incentives.
But who runs institutions?
You have to institutions. Those of us who study political economy and stuff, we also call institutions agencies of restraint. They're agencies of restraint because human beings, we have all sorts of vices and we have all sorts of venom. And if you go back to even sort of basic political philosophy about social contracts and Locke and Hobbes and all those people, we say, let's create rules.
We do,
which we all observe.
Yes.
And then there's a sanction for breaking the rules.
Whether you're good or bad, you follow the rules.
Whether you follow the rules. Okay. So my preoccupation is with a rule-based system, not with good people.
No,
you design your system so that the worst people can actually...
If the custodian of the system is seen to have any kind of character flaw, you kind of corrupt it from the very beginning?
There is no custodian of the system. Look at what has just happened in the UK. Look at Trump. If in a democracy, the electorate is fickle. It will elect Sonko, it will elect Trump, it will bring up Boris Johnson, it will bring Babayao up. The question you have to ask is, can you actually have institution?
Or simply, can you get stuff done with this individual?
No, the democracy and institutions are actually an insurance system against tyranny. Okay? Tyranny would be the default without institutions. So, what you want to do, if the fickle society elects a tyrant, can you survive that tyrant for that term?
David, if I can just insist on this point.
This thing of Kenya, we have, let me just make one final point.
Please go ahead.
We have a messiah complex. Who is the wonderful person who's going to save us from ourselves? We are looking for someone to save us from ourselves. Because this is a systemically corrupt society. We are dishonest.
So there is a problem.
It is us. These people are products of society. So we have to sit down and say, good people, unless we have a rule-based system, we are going to eat our own intestines.
Okay, so let me flip this question and then ask, what then has endeared you to this side?
Now, I have not been endeared. If you recall how I got into this side, it was because of a thing called BBI. I worked very hard, among other people, to bidwife a new constitution. One of, I think, after the new constitution, I said I can retire because it's not fun. You get a chance to actually have a chapter of your constitution, more or less, to your name. And I said, I've done my bit. And then I watched people I have worked with, Raila Odinga and company, actually designed to systematically dismantle that constitution. This is where I draw the line. I called my civil society friends to a meeting, and I told them, if this thing goes to a referendum, we are going to be overrun. Those of us who believe that we should defend the constitution. And our only chance of actually being able to fight this thing is we align with a political force. And the only political force now which is not aligned with those people is William Ruto. Whatever we think of him
It's besides the point.
It's
is
besides
the point.
You are aligned.
Our interests are aligned. Then we fight BBI. After we are done, then we ask ourselves the next step. Do we align for the election? I called a meeting. I did not do this, whatever. George Kigoro convened it. We sat at a tent behind KHRC office because it was during COVID. And I put this proposition on the table. Many people saw the sense, but you could see they had
They had doubts.
No, it was more psychological, the idea, because you have demonized someone so much that you actually do not see that person as a potential political ally. But I actually consulted very senior people in this country, in civil society, luminaries. And in private conversations, they said, look, I remember one of them, who I will not name, told me, look, if you look at all divided societies with this kind of situation, whether it's Northern Ireland or South Africa or it's Cambodia, all of these places, at some point you have to, Israel and the PLO, at some point you have to shake hands with the enemy. We had those conversations.
Work with the devil, cross the river.
Cross the river and then.
Then deal.
And that was how I got onto
But
this.
David, this was not the first time that Raila Odinga was talking about amending the constitution.
In fact, if you
In
read...
2014, the then NASA talked about...
In fact, I wrote the final press conference release of NASA about what our agenda is. And we had 3-point plan about the Constitution. There's no question as to whether we could revisit some issues in the Constitution, particularly this executive system, whether really we want to do, whether it's the cause of the problem. We talked about devolution, strengthening devolution, and most fundamentally about security sector reform. I wrote that document. I read it to the public. Then when Raila did the handshake, we sat with him and said, look, okay, you've done this. This is not our roadmap, but now that it's happened, you got lemons, you make lemonade.
Right.
Let's have a structured process. Let's go back to a Serena type process. Okay? So that we have a structured dialogue, and then our roadmap was we form a transitional government, which will then do particularly the electoral reforms that keep taking us back to an electoral crisis. And that was actually the point of departure. We disagreed with Raila team on whether to have a structured process or whether to go into an Usumkata government, an informal Usumkata government. So they wanted to go into an informal Usumkata government like yesterday. And I said, no, we should hold out and have a certain type process and only have, if we are going to share power, only when we have a document that can be endorsed by one and like we had done in 2007. So it is not a question of whether there are things in the constitution. We have the gender rule keeps bothering us. There are things we know we did not complete. The inability to do security sector reform is a big problem. Is there something that we didn't get right there? But to then do 70-something clauses, which is a Trojan horse for creating 5 positions at the top, so that Uhuru can become prime minister or whatever, and you do this thing they were calling Putin Medvedev. Yeah. So that's the issue.
Let's take a break. 26 minutes to 10, Kenya's biggest conversation. We want to take a short break, take a look at the weather and traffic. Dr. David Day is still with us in the studio. We'll open up the phone lines after this break and business, so you can engage with Dr. Day for a bit. Good morning. We'll be back. Election Bilanoma, 21 days to go. Are you looking at your neighbor and seeing the political leaning that they have, and then you're feeling agitated and feeling that this person needs to get out of here before we get into an election? That is a wrong approach. I mean, you've seen it, Dr. Day, even before. Just because you are one person and you're married to somebody from a different community, your entire family now starts disagreeing. Because hawa watu wenu wanako pande ile na sisi tuko pande hii. And we've got to get out of that. We've got to get out of that cycle. And especially this time, we're saying Election Bilanoma. Standard Group is partnering with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, going around the country preaching this message of peace. Election Bilanoma, Penda Jirani.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We are talking about the manifesto, the plans at Kenya Kwanza. And of course, we have to talk in those 18 minutes, Dr. D. We've got to talk about the reality on the ground, what the ground is saying. After you launched your manifesto, you've gone around the country. This is preceded by, of course, all those many county town halls and signing of the charter with the various interest groups, including the youth, women, persons with disability. Did that endear you to the people?
This is the first time, and the only time I think a political party has written a manifesto from the ground up. We have done manifestos in boardrooms and then gone and flogged them to the people. So this time around, and not only did we go to discuss, to talk with the people, we went to listen. If you watch those, we would sit down. And the people, we had organized all the people, they would come organized in the various, we call them value chains. So there'd be about 40 speakers representing the key sectors in that county, all the way to, we've had hairdressers, Nyeri Town, Shoeshine Boys Association, you name it. And it was very empowering for them to realize that they are being listened to. And for us, I think it's part, I feel, and that this is really in itself a transformational political contribution. That this is, our constitution envisages when it talks about public participation. But we have limited public participation to some instrumentalized validation of policy. We have not really taken political participation to the political level. So the fact that we have done this, I think one of the things that is going to do in the long term, I hope, for me the most exciting thing, it is going to build an issue-based political party. The last issue-based political party in Kenya was KANU at independence. And then it also eroded over time. And you could see KANU had very organic sort of support. When I was growing up, KANU people were really KANU people. They wore red shirts, and they actually meant something. So we hope that this is going to become our way of doing things. The other contribution it has made, and in terms of even what you have said, is we have detribalized the political campaign. And we have then forced the other people to raise the bar. So they are scrambling a lot to move from personalities to issues. But they didn't do their homework to have enough content to drive that agenda. So you see that they are really still trying to sort of package individuals as messiahs. Because they didn't do their homework. We are not packaging and selling an individual as a messiah.
But
We are selling the plan.
But you need to package a person. If you look at our politics, Dr. Ari, it has been personality based for the longest time. I don't understand where is the change. It's still personality based.
Yes,
You
but
talk of UDA, but
It's Ruto.
yes, without Ruto, there is no UDA.
there is UDA. Believe you me, there will be UDA without Ruto, because one of the things I've found interesting about Ruto, he has said it before, but I did not actually believe he walks the talk, is that he is really a believer in institutional politics. And I think that's because he was brought up in Kanu, which was a big political institution. So he's a very big believer in big national political parties. So even I remember in 2017, he would ask, because he was the engine behind Jubilee, so that they merge all those parties and form a big political party. And he would ask, why can't NASA also merge? So that we have two national political formations. So I think the determination to actually establish, as part of his political legacy, a big national political party like they try to do with Jubilee is something that I think will persist.
Dr. You're saying that in the absence of Ruto as head of UDA would continue the same steam and verve that it has.
We are there.
No.
You don't think we are significant?
Or you are significant with Dr. William Ruto.
I think I can I personally think I can step in and take the role of William Ruto if he's not there.
Dr. Ari,
I have no doubt that I would be able to provide that.
Dr. Ari, you are a
that
serious
leadership.
citizen
Yes.
and much respected.
Yes.
But you are not known as a politician.
You are not born one.
No.
But I'm making the following point.
Yes.
I made the point about UDA right now.
Yes.
Being a very collegiate generational sort of project.
Is it what
And
you're
I
saying is
believe-
aspirational, I believe.
I
Or are you
believe-
saying it's a reality?
I believe it's a reality that we will make it a reality. I have been in the process of trying to do that with the people of my generation since the early 90s. If you talk to the Kabandos of this world, I can tell you that I have convened them. And let's try and form a political formation of our generation. If you talk to Governor Ruto Mureithi, he will tell you, I have convened them in the 90s. Let's try and form something like this. So if you talk to John Githongo, he will tell you, I have convened them.
David
and tell them,
Kalaberi.
let's try and form something like this. It's just that it is sort of not who I thought that we would do it with. But I am completely determined. Personally.
It could happen, but you'll forgive me for my skepticism. Moi stopped being president. Where did Kanu go to?
You know, I think bystanders like yourself
Yes.
can be skeptical. But we have done things in this country politically by just sheer bullheaded determination and ignoring skeptics. We could not have done a new constitution if a small bunch of people did not wake up one day in 2005 and decide that now we have lost the election and the multi-party is not sufficient. We need to make the constitution the agenda. We went to a workshop. We were about 15 people. I know that Willie Mutunga was there, Kivuza Kibwana, Washira Maina, Duncan Okello, all sorts of people. And that is what became the 2010 constitution. So my vantage point is not one of that you can't do it. My vantage point is that anything I get into politically, I start from the premise that it can be done.
Do you think that this message needs to be heard over and over and over again by Kenyans until the day that Kenyans go to vote? And I'll tell you why I'm asking when you answer that. Do you think that this needs these elements, these factors that you've shared with us about this plan?
We are doing it. And that's why I'm here. So we will do it. Elections are elections. Whichever we go. When we traveled to the US and the UK with William Ruto and with Musalia and those kind of people, one of the questions which was asked most consistently by the audiences we spoke to is about whether William Ruto would accept results if he lost. And he consistently answered, and I actually found it persuasive. You check the way somebody is responding to an issue. And he said, look, government is as good as the opposition, which watches it.
Yeah.
We've discovered one is, and he is very clearly said, the thing which really messed up the country in the second term of Jubilee was when the opposition joined the government.
Okay.
Because there was no one to watch
Sure.
us. So he's very clear that if we doesn't win, he would like to build a strong opposition.
Okay. So there's a presidential debate
Yes.
that's happening this month. And it's been said that William Ruto will not attend. Would you encourage him to attend based on what you've just said?
It has not been said he will not attend. His media team has advised him that he shouldn't attend if the media continues to behave as disgracefully as it has behaved in the last couple of months in terms of coverage and capture by the establishment. So we have left it to him.
To him to decide.
To decide whether he will take that advice or whether he will not take it. And we have told him, please.
Would you advise otherwise?
We have told him, please do not tell us. Make
your
call.
own decision.
Make the judgment call, because it is you. If you take our advice and then it turns out to have been a very bad decision politically, we take the flak. So we want you to take responsibility for the choice that you make, because it's a very serious call. And when it comes to very serious political calls, you have to leave it to the person.
Like you did with the choice of running mate.
Yeah, that was the same. We had all sorts of theories and all sorts of committees and all manner of people. In the end, there was one sort of convergence of thinking around one time, and then he went to bed and he woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he said, I've changed my mind.
I'm going this way.
Going this way.
Do you think he changed his mind, or do you think that was his mind all along?
No. I think he went with his instinct. I think he was prepared to. The numbers actually were not bad for the running mate, but I think in the end, he has. You don't spend 30 years in politics without developing a political instinct to be able to exercise some of those judgment calls at the last possible moment. And you know that somebody is those instincts are well honed when you don't see it at first, why he made that call, and then a month or two down the road you say,
You see it.
Do you now? I
see
I absolutely see why.
Tell us why. What do you see? So let's just break it down.
I'll tell you what I've
Initially,
seen.
very many were of the school of thought that Professor Kithure Kindiki would be better placed as running mate. As you're saying, go to bed. You think that all of you are aligned. Wake up, and the principal has changed his mind because of his political instinct. Do you now see?
I am not saying he changed his mind. I think
He made a decision.
He made a decision, or that I think he would have made in the first place. That was where his inclination was in the first place. What I have then subsequently seen is the assault on the choice of the candidate by people I would call would be Kikuyu kingpins. Apparently, it seems that we had discounted that there were people who are eyeing themselves as successors to Uhuru Kenyatta as Kikuyu kingpins, and what they wanted was a vacancy. Because it is their reaction.
By having a Tharaka there,
Exactly.
That it leaves the
You
Kikuyu.
leave a whole entire field vacant. So if you observe, there are a few who have drifted away from our side so that they can seek that position where they think that there might be a vacancy, because they don't actually think a woman qualifies. So had I not, so obviously he would probably be more alive to those politics than some of us, because he would have known, I'm sure he would have been canvassed by these people about the running mate and all sorts of things. So he was privy to information and what people are in it for that we were not. So in the end, he probably figured that that fight would continue and it probably undermine
His own campaign.
His own campaign.
Do you think that since then he has gained some more votes in the Mount Kenya region, or has he lost?
I must say that our running mate is a very effective grassroots politician. So that's another thing. He is indefatigable. He obviously has the political and administrative experience. And in fact, I know that he is the guy who helped us get those town halls in Mount Kenya, mobilization skills working. So there's no doubt about his ability to mobilize. He also has skills and orientation that we don't. He has a very, very strong interest and orientation in the public service, having been a civil servant for many years standing. So I'm finding that he's injecting in our policy thinking a lot of input to make us think more about the public service. That we were too, I think, lean too heavily towards the economy. And he's showing us you also need to balance and think about the public service. So yes, he adds a lot of value.
How many votes do you see coming out of Mount Kenya? Out of the 6 or so million?
We think we should, obviously our target is to be able to retain the entire Jubilee 2013 and 2017 vote in that region, which would put you in the 80s. And if we can deliver that, I think the election is over. Because I think if you look at the numbers, we have managed to convert quite a few of Raila's strongholds into battlegrounds, Western, Ukambani, and the coast. And we see that Raila's only path to victory is the mountain. So if we keep him out of the mountain, then there is actually no path to victory there. So we intend to keep the mountain.
How many votes does he need? There are those that have said that he only needs 800,000 votes in the mountain and he's home and dry.
I don't know how they do their math. I don't know. You obviously, we will never really know what the actual 2017 numbers were. Whether we, on that side, we had done better. But the official results say he lost by 1.4 million votes already. So even if we make that 1 million, and then you're saying that he has lost ground in many of his bases, Western where he had 85, and now we are in the upper 40s, we are climbing towards half, Ukambani, coast. If we have eaten probably 1 million more votes, then he needs at least 2 million votes in the mountain to catch up. 2 million votes in the mountain is in the upper 40s. So those who are saying that he needs a small number don't actually know how to count.
But do you consider, for instance, that the mountain, as we refer to it, is not just predominantly Kikuyu, Embu, Meru votes, and that there are other diaspora individuals who actually live in those particular areas?
20% of Kiambu, that's it.
20% of Kiambu is diaspora.
That's it, yes.
Dr. David Day, thank you very much for joining us today. We want to have you again before we get into the election, if possible. And then, of course, thereafter, even keeping track of all the promises that have been made by the various political camps and those that win. Even if UDA doesn't win, it's going to have members of parliament. It's going to have people in as governors. It's good to see that they are standing by what they promised.
We're going to have a majority in parliament, that's for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Join us again tomorrow morning. We will have the ambassador of the Ukraine joining us tomorrow. Keep it here for that conversation. We want to know what's happening there and how come we're hungry.
Here.
Here. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a lovely day.